Wow, so good! Seamless epic transition on my cinematic B-roll in slow motion. Isn't that dope? You know what, YouTube? Today, well, that's not what we're gonna do.
S'entraîner, pratiquer pour la recherche constante d'amélioration. Repousser ses limites physiques, mais surtout mentales. Les difficultés ne sont là que pour nous permettre de les dépasser, de nous dépasser. Apprécier tous les jours la capacité de faire ce qui nous passionne, ce qui nous tire vers le haut. RSLNT pour Resilient. Forcer le corps et l'esprit à s'adapter. On est tous responsables de nos défaites, de nos victoires. Enjoy the process, get fit, get healthy, be resilient.
I know the real question you've been asking yourself since you've been watching my video is, wow, but how does it get that dream body? Simple, I do CrossFit. You know, it's this cult of people who live barbell screaming, who use their own language like Wood, Pierre, Imam, and who eat mostly seeds. Yeah, I'm not one to brag, but yeah, I do have a certain level. Today we're going to shoot a little promo film for the box with JP, my coach.
Bienvenue à la boxe. Le WOD du jour.
And I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to shoot a behind the scene and finally introduce a bit of video on the channel. I would especially like to talk about how I organize this kind of shooting and how I think about the production in relation to the final result I want to achieve. Please note also that today we are talking about the shooting, but in the next video I will show you the whole editing and post-production part. Subscribe, ring the bell, blah blah blah, and you know. I'm not going to explain all the details of an entire brief, but to sum up, it's about answering the 3 W's. Who, what, why. Who is your client? What does he want to get or what does he need, which sometimes it's not the same thing. And finally, why? What is the outcome he wants to get with this project? In our case, what we want is a 1 minute-ish video that, without necessarily being a tool to promote the box, will be more an illustration of JP's state of mind regarding CrossFit, his mantra, be resilient, to represent his identity, and at the same time a video that he can use on his Instagram, YouTube. In addition to lingering on the pre-production and production parts, I really wonder what I could talk about for a first introduction to video after a year talking almost exclusively about photography. I guess that you noticed on YouTube, with the democratization of channels on video making, it also generates a standardization of the proposed content. You have trends that appear, and the biggest one for some time now is all the fantasy around terms like cinematic B-roll or epic transitions. One could imagine that cinematic looks are about tips like shooting in 24 frames per second, the 180-degree rule for the shutter speed. In short, technical tricks that allow you to get closer to the visual look and feel obtained with the cameras used in the film industry. No, not on YouTube, my friend. Okay, let's talk a little bit technical. Camera, the A7 III, nothing original. Where I'm going to try to get closer to a slightly different look is that I'm not going to use my usual lenses. There, I brought myself cinema lenses. So what's the difference? Quite complex to explain, I will try to simplify it. Photographic lenses express the amount of light received in f-stop because it's based on the ratio of the focal length to the diameter of the aperture. But this measurement scale is imprecise. So for example, f4 is not really f4, and between two lenses, depending on the coating and other factors, you don't really have the same amount of light. In photography, it's minimal, and we can edit in post-prod, but in video, it can be a problem for the color calibration. As a result, we don't use a focal measurement, but a transmittance measurement, a percentage of light transmission. The lenses of the same range are all calibrated in the same production line, so that each lens has the same amount of light for each stop. Okay, I stop. I've already lost you. The other advantages are the presence of notch rings to put a follow focus, and especially the fact that the aperture is unclipped. You don't go from 1.4 to 1.8, but you modify the light input in a fluid way, in the same way as with an ND filter if you want. It's really useful when shooting, especially since we are going to shoot entirely in natural light. I didn't bring anything with me. Oh, and we will also talk about the audio part in the next video. So I have some Samyang lenses, 14mm, 35mm, 85mm. They exist with the Sony mount, but this is a Canon mount. So I also have an adapter mount by Viltrox. The goal is to try to get different textures, different looks. For that I even bought a 135mm sonar from Zeiss. It's a very old manual lens that you can find for a pittance on eBay. Anyway, let's see what we can get with it. It's the first time I'm going to test all this on the field. Let's go back to YouTube. And yes, I blame you, Jesse Driftwood, Daniel Schiffer, Peter Lindgren, j'accuse. Today on YouTube, cinematic means slow motion and transition effects between each shot. You see it everywhere. And anyone who has any pretensions to be a filmmaker has to do this kind of editing. It's become a genre. What is just a technique has become a video genre on its own. Think of the first guy who did partial coloring on a black and white photo. That guy was a genius. It was superb. Today it's disgusting. Sorry, if you saw this picture and thought, wow, it's really original. Either you're over 75 years old, welcome to the channel! Subscribe! Or you need to rethink your definition of good taste. Okay, another example. Think of the first guy who thought, hey, I'm passionate about coffee. I'm going to film my barista skills in slow motion because it's gonna look so cool. Damn, yes, it's cool, Pete. But you, the 1 millionth YouTuber to do exactly the same thing without it having anything to do with what you do or who you are. How do you justify it? I should create my own B-roll of bubble tea trend. All my shootings, I start them here in front of the computer. We're going to create a mood board to visually immerse ourselves in the universe we're going to deal with. In our case, I already know about CrossFit, but it's even more important when it's an area you don't know. Personally, it's on Pinterest that I find most of the material I need. You can look for video inspiration, but I personally prefer photos. It helps me to have in mind the shoots that can interest me in the most aesthetic possible way. So I create a dedicated Pinterest board, and when I have enough pictures, I switch to an online app called Miro. It's a whiteboard that I use to organize my photos to make a kind of mind map. I'm going to classify all this according to the 3 types of images I think I need. First, the ones that will be related to the activity itself, words, movements, etc. Then we extend the perspective a little bit with everything that will create the environment in which we find ourselves, the general atmosphere. So there are shoots about the premises, the equipment, etc. And to finish, I'm going to try to bring back emotions in all this. This will obviously be done thanks to all the human elements, so all the shoots with JP. As many close-ups that will show him in the activity, the adversity he faces, and as many more general portraits that show who he is. That's why I like Miro, it's that I can then reorganize my images to find a link, try to go from point A to a point B, and to come up with a story. Transitions, epic B-rolls, are techniques that have always existed, that have been reinvented, recontextualized by some YouTubers because it made sense in their work. They managed to make it their own style, and they do it awesomely well. It's their identity. Daniel Schiffer, Peter Lindgren, they are more than legit in this type of visual. They are almost representative of it. But what about you? I have no doubt that there is a learning effect in the multiplication of videos on this team. When you start, and even all the time I would say, learning it's based on mimicry. You have to steal from the artists you admire. That's how it works. But it's to digest and reappropriate what they do, not to duplicate it. Today it's become a trend. It's not anymore a technique that you add to your skills. There is this pack mentality thing. We are in the YouTube video tribe because we make this kind of video. We are a filmmaker because we make epic transition and we can film in 120 FPS. Bro, as our master said, Karl Lagerfeld of course, trendy is the last step before outdated. When I determine the visual universe I'm going to try to create, and by reordering it with Miro, I try to create a framework, a story. Once I have it, that's when I will work on how to tell it. It's only after this step that the style comes into play, not beforehand, or just because you found a cool technique you're going to do everything with it. You have to differentiate the technique from the genre. The first one is at the service of the other, not the other way around. Okay, have you ever done CrossFit? It's pretty intense, and that's what I want to capture in the video. I want a nervous, dynamic, even more aggressive style. So how do you film this? First point and first necessity, the number of shots. I'm going to need a lot of material to work on the edit, so a lot of images. To give you an idea, we shot 3 1 hour and a half sessions, 2 of the movements, and another one for portraits, to finally extract only 1 minute of video. My mood board is really going to help me to think about the framings I like, and to have it with me already prepared, it saved me from wasting time in production. The goal is to think visually in the same way as in photography, and then just find a way to bring movement to it. That's what video is all about, it's movement, either brought about by moving the point of view, the camera, or the captured action. Basic rule, always have movement on the screen. The next step, in order to have as much material as possible on each element, is to change scale, to think from macro to micro, to capture all the possible steps between the widest frames, to establish the situation, to the closest as possible to the subject, to feel the action. Example here with the rower, where I'll start with overall shots, then closer, tighter shot, and then close-ups on details. The goal is to have this accumulation of images that will give rhythm. If you say B-roll, stop, okay? The definition is simple. The A-roll is the main reel, the one with which we capture the performance. The B-roll is all the capture insert shots that we can then use to add information or make the editing more dynamic. If all your video is B-roll, then it's A-roll. Anyway, stop with the cinematic B-roll. Another thing very important to me to get today, the very raw sensation of the captation. I really wanted to avoid taking a gimbal with me and get this kind of stabilized feeling, too smooth, too perfect. No, I wanted it to feel handheld. There are several solutions to avoid micro-trembling, which are never aesthetically pleasing. The first one, when I have nothing else, just the strap of your camera, like that. The second one of my favorite accessories, the top handle. Either you mount it on a cage or directly on the camera with the cold shoe. It's the accessory I use the most, really indispensable. If you want an extra stabilization point, you can also hide a side handle with a good grip like that. If you're interested, you can find a list of everything I use today in the description. Personally, I love the small rig brand. You always have small details that make the difference, but then you have a lot of other generic brands. The problem is when you walk or when you run. Of course, you have the Ninja Walk, but in addition, I use my tripod. I show you very quickly. The goal is to find a balance point like this, which will remove the hand micro trembling, but will remain smooth but shaky enough to have this handheld aspect. Why won't I go into more detail? Simply because I'm going to send you back to Brandon Lee's video, who developed this hack and who will explain it to you much better than me. I really recommend its channel, it's one of my favorite filmmakers, he's really on another level. All the walking and running shots have been shot like that, and I must admit that I love the way it looks and feels. I'm really wondering why I keep my running. We have our shoots, it moves in all directions. What can we add? Epic transitions, of course. The editing is very dynamic, very adds. The swoosh transitions, it could definitely fit well here. Obviously, we are not going to do it. Today's vlog is called Stop with your epic transition bullshit thing. That will be dumb. But you'll see that will be just fine without it. The language of video, the film grammar, is to move from one shot to another. The filmmaker's role is to find ways to do it in a way that is pleasing to the eye. And the basic tool is the cut. A simple cut, just a cut. Yeah, it's not necessarily easy to transition from one cut to another. One technique that helps with the cut is to do the cut in movement. And the swoosh transitions for cuts, that's the level 0 of this cut technique, since you're going to do your cut in the maximum blur. And I say that, but it's a great technique, totally legit. The problem is not there. The problem is, if you write a page of text and you repeat 150 times the same word as I just did with the word cut, well, you're boring, and besides you have no vocabulary. Making videos entirely centered around this technique is not surprising at all. The same thing for slow motion. Slow motion is really cool, super cinematographic, but if you ever seen a movie in the cinema, there are 1 or 2 shots that use it and no more. Tu arrives vers ta barre, bim, tu la prends, tu appréhendes la barre, tu vois, faut vraiment le truc, celle-là je la passe. The key to rhythm is to change it and try to surprise your audience every time. I shoot everything in 24 frames per second except for one shot. And it's a banger, you know why? Well, because there's only one. It's important. It stands out. You're focused on it. The music cuts off, you're feeling it, and bim! The rhythm starts up again, everything speeds up. And you know what? Well, we're already a little long today. All of that, we will really dig it in the next video, where we will talk about the editing and precisely how I organize for the rhythm, the transitions, the effect, etc. Yeah, that's where I'm going to tell you again to subscribe, of course, but wait, stay with me for another minute because this is super important. For that, I'm even going to take a very serious turn because it's essential. And not only for video, but also for photography. By the way, I know that you who are already following me are doing it for photography, since that's all I've been talking about from the beginning of the channel. Dude, I hope I didn't lose you too much. I even hope that it made you want to go into video, maybe. Don't hesitate to tell me in the comments. You know that I really read all your feedback, I even need it. And you who is new, who just saw the title Cinematic B-roll and you thought, oh yeah, well, welcome. My name is Nico and I do vlogs where I talk about my creative process and show the behind the scene of my work. Maybe it would have been better to start with the presentation at the beginning of the video. 1 year of YouTube and I'm still so bad at it. Okay, if you like all this epic transition, don't worry, it's super cool. Hey, if there's Daniel Schiffer or Peter Lindgren passing by, well, they probably have something else to do, but you never know. Guys, what you're doing is awesome, but you have created monsters. By the way, I put their channel in the description. If you don't know them, go watch what they do, it's dope. But here's the important part I want you to remember. In any creation, the essential thing is what it tells. There is a well-known expression that many filmmakers overemphasize. In a movie, there are 3 essential elements: the story, the story, the story. I know, it's very stupid, it's just the same word repeated 3 times. I will say it more like this. The story is at the heart of the creation, but not its originality, since everything has already been told. What's also important is the narrative, how you convey a story, and with the tools you use to convey it, how you turn it into emotions. I told you it was important. Maybe I should have added that it would be also beautiful. I had goosebumps. Okay mate, I see you in 2 weeks for the editing part, it's going to be great. I need to go to do my burpees. See you mate, keep on creating.